There it is. Sam LeCure. It's the Dead Red Cincinnati podcast. Welcome back.
That song gets me fired up.
It should. That's the idea.
That's
is to get you
a
fired
buddy
up.
of mine, a guitar player. So my guitar teacher kind of put me onto this guy. His name's Kevin Canifax. He wrote that song himself, and you may be hearing it in the ballpark here pretty soon. But yeah, that's ours to begin with. I mean, it's not ours, but all right, I'll shut up. You go.
We're going to make it famous, though.
Okay.
Welcome to the Dead Red Cincinnati podcast. Brian Giesenslaw, former Reds pitcher Sam LeCure. You'll see us on Reds Live pre and post game on Bally Sports. That's our day gig. Love that. And let's dive into the leadoff spot now, which is what we call it, which is what our Reds discussion generally will be. And we know what the month of May has been for David Bell and the Reds. And Sam, there was a visual as the Reds returned to Great American Ballpark and beat the San Diego Padres. But before you ever got to the end of that game, in the first inning, David Bell, and we've seen David before, he gets, when he gets ejected, it's usually for a reason. This time it was in the dugout. It was not directed at an umpire. It was not directed at the frustration of his team. But after Jake Fraley was hit on the hand again, David Bell took it out on a chair and the bat rack in the dugout.
Yeah.
And as you and I talked about this, wasn't there a piece of all of us, a piece of every Reds fan that was swinging that chair right along with David in frustration?
I mean, unfortunately, I hope so. Unfortunate that the team's in the situation that they are right now. And it's hard not to be frustrated. And I think you and I talked a little bit about it last night. Some of that's because the expectations for this year were higher. So if it was, just going to be another ho-hum, we hope to get to 500, I don't think anybody would really care much about it. But it's frustrating because the expectations were higher and we haven't really gotten to see that kind of play itself out because, and I don't like to talk about guys who aren't on the field, but they are a part of the puzzle. Mm-hmm. So it's frustrating because you haven't had your Friedels and McLeans and Martes and everybody all firing at one time. So I think that's where some frustration, and some of the reason that those guys aren't here is because of situations exactly like last night. I mean, exactly like that. Hitting the hand, hitting the wrist. Tyler Stevenson, Jake Fraley, Friedel, Strand. There was somebody else that I was thinking. I mean, 5 or 6 guys jumped right into my mind last night as far as getting hit in the hand. And Jake was just another one of them and had to come out of the game. And the outfield is a position where they're already stretched pretty thin. Yeah. Who's even still out there? Spencer hadn't played in a couple of days. Hopefully, you'll see him again soon. But it's certainly been frustrating. I appreciate the fact that David does that. And it seems at no point during his tenure have I ever heard a player say anything other than David Bell has our back.
Right. And that's exactly what Andrew Abbott said after the game. And he said he's always had our back. And he also said that should fire us up. And you don't want to make too much of this. We can't make too much of the emotional component and how each guy reacts to certain things. But Andrew Abbott said that. But in between, as David was asked about it postgame and he's describing what happened, he was talking about the injuries. He was not talking about the play of his team, but he did use the phrase, enough is enough. And I think in the broader context of what's happening with the Reds right now, you could apply that to the injuries, but all of us want to apply that to the greater picture of when are they going to turn it around?
Yeah.
And maybe we look back at some point at some of these things that have happened in a few games and the reaction from David Bell. And maybe you look back and you hope that you look back if you're the Reds and say, maybe we turned a little bit of a corner there, whether it was meant to be that or not. You hope you want to grasp onto that right now and look back and say, maybe that's where they turned a corner. What about the stars of the game and marketing the game based on the stars, their performances, their personalities, which is a word that I think has been brought back into baseball that for a while you kind of want to, do this to it and brush it off to the side. Elly De La Cruz has personality. He has star power, even at a young stage of his career. Fernando Tatis Jr. has star power. Got a little bit of a backstory too, but you can tell that, one, they have a relationship. They have a positive peer-to-peer, star-to-star relationship. And in game 1 of the Reds and Padres series at Great American Ballpark, De La Cruz, which he does all season long is stretching what would be a single for everyone else to right field into a double. Close play at second base. Tatis comes up with the ball, fires it in, close play, and when he's ruled safe, De La Cruz gives him the Dikembe Mutombo finger wag out to right field. And there was a reaction from Tatis, and it was positive. It was, all right, you got me that time. I'll get you next time, but you got me that time.
Yeah.
I think that's fantastic. I love it, but you have the whole crowd of people, as we've seen, bat flips and finger wags and barking at a dugout. There's a lot of people that don't.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I have grown accustomed to it, I guess. My thought during my playing days, eons ago, it's like 10 years ago, that long ago, was I didn't ever want to show any emotion one way or the other. I always wanted to be a guy that you didn't know whether I had just struck out the side or given up 5 runs. I didn't want anybody to know the difference, because to me that created an advantage for the opposition. They could see that I was frustrated, or they could see that I was cocky, and I didn't want them to know either one. Right. And then there's also the part of it. Now I'm also the part of it as I never wanted to show anybody up, and the things that they're doing now certainly would have gone into that category several years ago, that, oh, you're showing me up, you're going to get thrown at now. You can't do that anymore. And so that kind of thing is out the door, because there's injury involved with it, because everybody throws 100, and all those different types of things. So as far as the personality and the branding of some of these players, like, am I on board with it now? Not all the way. Like, some of it still to me is a little bit over the top, but I do enjoy the enthusiasm. It's a younger game. The players are younger. I can certainly see both sides of it, and I'm slowly kind of coming out of my shell as far as being able to enjoy that, as long as the reciprocation for Fernando Tatis is a playful one, and it doesn't turn into some big brawl where a bunch of people are getting hurt.
All right, let's go on to the stretch now. And this was something that we started last time, having a conversation about a piece in The Athletic, or a couple of pieces in The Athletic, from Ken Rosenthal and Jason Stark, about, does baseball need to modify rules to encourage the starting pitcher and the matchup and the star power of the starting pitcher to return that to the game? And we kind of got things started last week. We talked about requiring starters to go 6. We talked about the double hook. If your starter comes out before 6, you lose the DH. That was one thing. So they have a list of proposals, rules changes that could propel the starting pitcher back to the star power and the spotlight maybe that it's had in the past. And some of them I think are good, and some of them are a little absurd, but we're going to run through the list. And the next one on the list of proposed rules changes would be that a team can't have more than 6 relievers. And I'm looking at a reliever right now in the eyes, and I'm talking about cutting jobs. So this is a tough sell, right? Am I wrong?
Yeah, no, it's not. I mean, that'd be a pretty tough sell, especially because the game's become so reliant upon it.
Yeah.
It's such a huge part of, how teams build a roster is based on, their bullpen and being able to shut down wins towards the end of a game. And you see the usage and how it can change in the playoffs and such. That's, to me, it's not a reality. You have to do one. You kind of got to put the cart before the horse in this situation. Like, you have to have the starters going that deep for a couple of years to make it a league-wide thing before you could even consider cutting the other jobs, because if they just can't do it. Yeah,
it would be a gradual reduction.
It would have to be a gradual thing. Yeah.
Over the years, but still, I think that's probably one of the tougher ones.
That's pretty tough, because specialization, the jobs part of it. I mean, it's always been, well, it's not always been 5 starters. It used to be 4, I guess, but now the 5 starter, now it's even gone to 6 starters. So, okay, if you consider that you're going to have 7 starters and 6 bullpen guys, then it's a different story, right? Yeah. Nobody said anything about the number of starters. They just said 6 relievers.
Yeah.
So
it's
possible. You got 7 starters and 6, do the flip flop. I don't know. Right. I don't love it.
Yeah, I don't either.
They got 22 guys in the bullpen right now, and I still can't get a job.
There's that. The other thing, and the overriding issue for saving the starting pitcher is health.
Yeah,
and it's been a story from the start of this season, it's been amplified, I think, and that's a longer discussion. I'm not ready to have that discussion right now. But if you want to protect the health of your players, and they made the comparison to, football implementing rules to protect the quarterback. Should we implement rules to protect the starting pitcher? And and a lot of this is still being studied, and the medical folks are doing the research, but if we can logically assume that velocity and spin in greater intensity is impacting the health of pitching arms, which I think we can, then should there be certain things in place to reduce that? Should there be a ban on the sweeper, which is, doctors say, is tied specifically to a greater risk of arm injury based on what you have to do to your arm to make the baseball spin and move on that pitch? Should you put a limit on velocity, which I think is ridiculous? You can't do it. So my take on all of this is, we know those things. And if you're not going to ban certain pitches, players and organizations have to accept the inherent risk of injury if they have a bunch of guys who consistently throw 100, or they have a bunch of guys who spin the ball in certain ways that to a detriment to their arm. You accept that risk. It's going to happen. If you want to keep those guys in the game, accept it and move on. But that, to me, is not a way to try to help the starting pitcher.
I don't think, and honestly, dude, I don't think that organizations care about the answer to this question.
There you go.
Because here's a couple of reasons why. Because Walker Buehler, we just saw him last week, do an awesome game, had his second Tommy John surgery. He was kind of doing an interview with somebody saying, I'm very aware that by me going out there and putting max effort behind every pitch, that I'm putting myself at risk. So he's aware of it. Yeah. Number one, the players are aware that this is a possibility. So are the organizations. And the great thing for them is that if Walker Buehler's making $20 million this year, they've got an insurance that's going to cover them to pay him $20 million. Not out of their pocket necessarily, right? And the more players that are getting hurt that they're not paying, really, they bring up a cheaper player. So the turnover is greater. So you're not getting to guys, kind of in that middle lane. And I'll just kind of use, me as myself as an example, getting to the point where I was starting to make, not a crazy amount of money by any means, but not so much over, not $10 million, but they could find somebody to do it for league minimum that could be pretty close to what I was doing. Maybe they didn't have a track record. I'd done it for 4 or 5 years, and you've got the rookie that's coming up who likely had better stuff than I did, who, would be able to do it for, a quarter as much. So you're talking about margins for these organizations to keep some money in the bank. And that's one of them. The turnover of guys that are getting injured who don't make it back, they find somebody cheaper to do it. So I guess my broad stroke on that would be that I don't think that organizations really care. Now, when you find your Garrett Coles and your top end guys, for the Reds, obviously starting pitching is super important right now. And they want to protect these guys at all costs. Sometimes I feel like it's baby gloves, but they've been treated with baby gloves for a long time. Throw hard for a little bit, then we'll get you out of there before it becomes too much. So they've known all this, but it's an interesting concept. I love the starting pitching matchups.
Me too.
We'll keep talking about it because hopefully something comes to mind, but there's nothing just on tip of tongue that is like, this is going to work and this is going to get us back to that anytime soon.
Time to finish things up with Five and Dive, and we've allotted a little bit more time for Five and Dive. Last time I called you out for the rapid fire nature of what we intended it to be. Knowing you, I should know that that's a difficult ask.
Yeah.
Is to get anything rapid fire, but that's one of the things I love about you, man. One of the things I love about you. We're giving you more time this time because I like the questions.
Okay.
And we went to X and asked people for questions, and we're going to do that routinely on the show. And so it'll be for you, it'll be for me, but this time these are questions directed at Sam LeCure from the folks on the X and the Twitterverse. All right, so we're going to start with this. It's I think this one's a good one. Your favorite ballpark to pitch in. I think we've talked about this before, but give me that, and then think about if there's a ballpark past or present that you didn't have the opportunity to pitch and play in that you would have liked to, or that you think now you would like to be in that position?
Okay. This is not just me being Homer. I enjoyed pitching in Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
Home ballpark. I actually, for being a pitcher's ball or a hitter's ballpark, I actually ran pretty good numbers there. I think better than on the road.
Yeah.
But I always end up thinking of Wrigley and Fenway, just loving to pitch there because of the history of it, which leads me to the one that I didn't get to pitch in, which would have been old Yankee Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
I just missed it because having a chance to pitch in the new one, it felt like a museum, like all clean and everything.
Right.
And it didn't have near the same feeling as when I walked into Fenway.
Yeah.
Right. And the history of it and the people who would have walked through the hallways. So it would have been old Yankee Stadium.
I like it. All right. Moving on to number 2.
That was pretty good. That was like, yeah.
That was the clock was favorable there.
Okay.
So
good.
number 2 is thinking back to when you played, if the team was on a similar difficult stretch as the Reds are in right now, give me a good story of somebody that broke the ice in the clubhouse, whatever it was, just to try to change the vibe and change the mood.
So as you can imagine, Todd Frazier was a good one of these. I feel like I, had my hand in a couple, just, coming in acting like an idiot. The one that always has stuck out to me, and I'll try to keep this short, was in 2012, and it was Ryan Ludwig, who was one of my favorite teammates of all time. We were playing in Cleveland, and this is kind of the advent of the Ohio Cup.
The Cup.
So the whole that season was kind of, you talk about looking back on something. I don't know what our record was at the time. I mean, we could have been 10 games over or 10 game under for all I know. But I remember Luddy coming in all fired up about wanting this Ohio Cup because nobody cared. Nobody cared about, we wanted to win the series, but the Cup, nobody cared. But he came in and he really wanted that Cup bad. And so that became a thing for the rest of the year. We went to Philadelphia. We wanted the cream cheese cup. We're at San Francisco. We wanted the Golden Gate Cup. So we named it everywhere. We had the cup. And you remember, the picture on the paper of me doing it on the clenching your thirst. And
somebody picked it up at an antique shop or something.
Mesoraco. And we made him fill it up with beer for, to go to the bus, to go to the airport. So that was that. So Luddy, Frage, those are 2 guys I think I tried to be, but, I don't want to be too self-loving. More self-deprecating is my style.
That's okay. Number 3, there was a question on the Twitterverse about tattoos and ink. You've got some outstanding ink, and there's some amazing art of your family that I think there are great stories there. So we'll do that sometime. But one tattoo you have has always been, as soon as you showed it to me and explained it to me, I was like, that's cool. Yeah. If I had something that meant that much to me, I would do the same thing. And that is what?
That's this here.
What is that number on the back of your left arm?
So I don't know exactly how to explain it, but every time somebody starting with the guy who I guess delivered the first pitch in Major League history, he was number 1. Mm-hmm. And every person who interacted, came up to bat or whatever was 2, 3, 4 down the road. Babe Ruth was number, we'll say 714 because that's how many home runs he hit. Something like that. Bronson Arroyo was number 15,212.
But it's the number that signifies your official arrival to Major League Baseball, and you've made an appearance, and Baseball Reference tracks all this
chronologically throughout history, and that was the number. And so I wanted something to commemorate, pitching in the big leagues, but didn't want to have like my debut date and all this stuff. And I was kind of looking around, and I saw that. I was like, that's pretty cool. Like my own little serial number. If people ask me what it is, I can say it was my prison number, and then go to the story about what it actually is. So, dude, this is the best. And I shouldn't throw myself under the bus. Tangent, quick. So I was going on looking at something on Baseball Reference the other day. Bronson and I were talking about service time, and how it affects your pension, basically. And so I went on there and was looking for my service time. I guess they made some modifications, and I don't think this number's right anymore.
No way.
I swear, I think it's I don't even know what it is now, but I think it's 19753 or whatever it is. So I was like, damn it. So I may have to do some alterations on that, but I thought that was actually pretty funny.
So that's what it means. Story that I didn't know.
The number of player I allegedly was in history.
Sam shows up at the tattoo shop and rolls out some random number and goes, I think that's what number I was in Major League Baseball. Go ahead.
Pretty much.
All right. I like that one. We'll talk more tattoos later. The number behind you while we're on the number category. 63.
Yep.
You're 63 to me. You always will be 6'3" to me.
Yep.
How did you arrive at that number? Is there a good story?
So there's a story.
I forgot to ring the bell. This is number 4.
Okay. I was always number 21. So Roger Clemens was my favorite player when I was in grade school and high school.
Mm-hmm.
So I was always number 21. I got to college at Texas where he went to school.
Yep.
His number was retired, so couldn't wear it. Got to the minor leagues and, asked for number 21 every year, got it most years.
Mm-hmm.
When I got to the big leagues, it was Chris Dickerson, formerly of Believe in Reds, that was on this show, who was wearing number 21. I'm like, oh, I'm a rookie. Like, I'm not going to ask for it. I had number 63 in spring training for the last couple of years. And, was always like, okay, I'm kind of on the cusp of being in the big leagues. I would like number 21. If I don't get it, what would I do? Right. Well, there's 21. There's 42, Jackie Robinson, which was retired in Major League Baseball. And then there's 63, which is a multiple of 21.
Ooh, I like that. I never knew that. Never knew it.
There you go.
Story behind 63.
There it is.
I like that. I like that a lot. Final question today. Yeah, let's ring it. Number 5 for 5 and Dive is the shirt. Give me the Dave Parker story behind the shirt that we touched on off the top.
All right. So you and I maybe had been on one with him before, the Reds Caravan, and, the Cobra was on it, or would meet us in a stop. And, it's Parkinson, doesn't he?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's got some kind of a disease he hasn't been doing great of late, but this was, kind of early in that phase. Yeah. And he was great, always real good to me. And, met him a couple of times along the way, and always a sweetheart of a man for a giant of a man. And then I saw him this year at Bronson's Hall of Fame induction.
Mm-hmm.
And again, wasn't looking awesome, but he came into the hotel, and I had just bought this shirt recently. This is Homage, which I'm pretty sure is a Columbus company. And walked up to him, and he didn't recognize me, but he recognized my voice, which I thought was funny. And so we talked a little bit. Hey, how you doing, Sam? I said, blah, blah. He's like, you boys going to get after it tonight? And I kind of leaned up in his ear. I said, Dave, if you hear any noise, that's just me and the boys bopping. He goes, I've heard that before. so I wanted to have that on today. One, because Dave Parker's just an amazing man, and we all wish him well. And, I want to try and wear something nice for the show. So
I love it. I love the shirt. And Dave, like you said, has always been so good to all of us, and the stories that he's told. But even now, as he fights this battle, this health battle,
when he has his moments, he's still there.
Get that sparkle in his eye.
No doubt about it.
Those eyes, the color of his eyes and the way they look at you, all the best to the Cobra.
Like a true Cobra.
Like a true Cobra. We love it. That's number 5. And that's it. I think that's it for this show. You want to know time?
We tried, and I don't think we did great, but
32.
Not bad.
Not too bad. Not too bad. It's fun. I think this is the first television version of the show, which we'll try to keep that going and try to keep you out there engaged with the podcast and the Reds and more great stories. Dead Reds Cincinnati. Sam, see you next time.